Hey guys, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you how we can integrate PayPal into our Django website and handle payments that way. So before we get started, I'm going to show you the demo here of what we're going to be building, and then we'll just get right into it. So if you take a look at the website, it's just a 2-product website right now, and we have these 2 books. So my favorite book, The Alchemist, and then The Mount of Olives, which is written by my brother. So I'm just going to use that as a demo here. And when we select that book, we're going to be able to actually pay for this item via PayPal. So the first option is to click this PayPal button right here. The user can log in and will be charged the amount of the total for the book here. And they also have the option of checking out with a PayPal debit card. So if they click this, they can add in their debit or credit card information and the user will be charged. So that's what we're going to build in the second part of the video. But just to get things started, we're going to use the simple checkout method here. So I'm going to show you how we can build in this checkout system right here with a static amount, and then we'll actually start integrating the backend. So there's 2 different ways we can do this. There's the PayPal server side integration, which is a backend integration. You can use Python, Node.js, or anything like that. And then there's a client side integration, which is what we'll do here. So that just lets us handle all the payment information on the front end, and we're actually going to use that data and actually save it in the database. But the integration will be much easier than using the server side. I'll probably put that into another video after this. So let's just start by creating this simple checkout right here that allows us to charge 1 cent to a fake account here. So we have a sandbox account. PayPal lets us just create this to create fake charges and send money from and to fake accounts. So we're going to create that sandbox account, and then I'll show you how to render these buttons. So to do that, let's go ahead and look up PayPal Developer API. And in here, I'm going to give you a quick overview. I'm not going to go too far into the documentation. I will provide links in the video description, but if we go here, we're not going to be on the first page, but I'll actually cover this in a minute here when we actually start with that checkout flow. But we're going to go to basic integration, and at the bottom of basic integration, I'm going to grab the demo code that we're going to put into our template here. This HTML should be pretty easy to understand. All we have is an empty div right here that has the ID of PayPal-button-container, and then we're going to add in this script tag, which later we're going to add in our client ID into right here. So this is going to tell us which PayPal account to send the money to whenever somebody actually processes a payment. So we have that script tag, and then in our custom script right here, what we're going to do is, because of this script tag, we're going to be able to do PayPal.buttons and then actually render those buttons right here to that empty div. So this empty div is now going to be occupied with these buttons right here. And this is where we actually start customizing things. So we're going to have 2 main methods. We have the create order method and then the on approve method. So create order, we're going to start customizing this a lot, but this is where we set up our basic amount right here of 1 cent. So whatever I change here, if I change up a different amount here, it's going to charge whatever we set there. So that number is going to be dynamic once we complete it. And then on approve, this is where we actually create the charge. So let's go ahead and create the sandbox account and start adding this into our template. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a search for PayPal sandbox. And we need to create 2 sandbox accounts. So one for the person sending the money and one for the person receiving the money. So we're going to have a business and a personal sandbox account, and we're going to send money between these 2 accounts. And this will all be dummy data for now. So you're going to need a real PayPal account. So go ahead and create one, log in through it, and then from there we can actually create those sandbox accounts. So once you're logged in, you'll be redirected to developer.paypal and then these accounts right here. And by default, you get 2 accounts to start with, but we want to customize these. So we're going to create an account, and I want to customize these. So we're going to say create custom account. And from here, the first one I want to be the business account, and we'll just say biz@gmail.com. Let's see if it lets us do that. And we actually need to create an email and password. Let's just say bizdennis. That should work there. Okay, so then we have a name, so we'll create put 2 N's there. And for the payment method, we'll leave that alone there, but let's just start with $1,000 so we can set whatever amount we want in here, and we'll leave everything as is. And let's go ahead and create that account. So once we have the account, we can actually log in through a Sandbox PayPal account. So let's just do sandbox.paypal.com. And this is going to give you the normal login system that you would see in PayPal. So normally you would just see paypal.com, but because this is a Sandbox account, we can now log in with that fake account we just created. So it was called Biz Dennis, and then the email and password that we gave it, and we should see that $1,000 in the account. So this is our business account, let's say at Gmail. Okay, so here's that account. It's taken a little bit longer to load. I think it's because it's still processing it right here. But here's that $1,000 we just transferred into it. Again, that's a fake amount, and we're gonna log in or log out. So this is the business account, and we need to create one more for the personal. So the type right here is business, and let's create a new one. We wanna customize that. I wanna be able to use a real email, or at least use an email for it. And this is gonna be called personal. So let's just say personal, we'll just say Dennis at Gmail, and create a password for that. And let's just say Dennis. And this user, let's just give him $2,000 so we can see a difference between the two accounts, and we can leave everything as is. So once this is created and processed, we'll log in, make sure both accounts are ready, and have the set amount. So we'll wait till that's done right there, and we'll log in through here. So again, in sandbox.paypal.com, we're gonna log in to our personal account here. So we're gonna do personal, and then there's a D there. So personal Dennis at Gmail, and let's log in. Okay, so here's our personal account. There's that $2,000. I hope that makes sense right now. We just have 2 PayPal accounts for our Sandbox accounts. We have the business one and the personal one. So what we're gonna do is actually configure this business one in this account right here. If we go to our apps right here, or my apps and credentials, here we can see the difference between 2 PayPal accounts. So we have the live version and the Sandbox account. So I'm not gonna look at the live because I have a real account there, but we need to go ahead and create an account right now. So within Sandbox, we're gonna create the app that's actually gonna process this. So it's gonna give us an application key, and then we're actually gonna be able to use this to set up the user. So let's just say Django PayPal. So that's what the app is gonna be called. And we're gonna connect this to Business Dennis. So I believe this needs to be connected to a business account if it's on a website. What's going on here? Can't use PayPal, so let's just say Django Dennis, and we'll make that one word because I don't know if that's gonna be an issue for us. And that should all work. So we're gonna create the app, and we should have our access keys. Okay, so here's the account we just created, Django Dennis, and we should be able to actually get the client ID and the secret key. So the secret key, I've used it before when I handled the server side integration, but for the client side, this is all we need to paste in right here. Where is that demo? So this is what we're gonna need to paste in into client ID. So we're gonna throw that in there, and then that's how PayPal knows which account to connect this to. So now that we have our 2 Sandbox accounts created, we have the business one and the personal one. Let's go ahead and actually add these buttons into our template and start actually making this connection. Okay, so for those of you ready to start coding along with me, if you want to start with the same files that I have, I'm going to have the starter code and the final project code in the video description. So go ahead and download the starter code, and I'll actually go over everything in a couple of minutes here, but it's a simple Django project. We have one app called Base, and we are gonna work with a view called Simple Checkout. And in Base, under templates, it's simple_checkout. And the view to that, or the URL pattern, is simple-checkout. So that's gonna give you this page right here. And once you have that set up, go ahead and grab this div right here. So the empty div to throw in our those buttons right there. So paste that in, and that's going to be with the ID of PayPal dash button dash container. And we also need to grab this script tag. So go ahead and paste that in just under that div inside our body right there. And in here, we need to grab our key. So back to our sandbox account, go ahead and go to your apps, open up the app that we set up. So whatever you called yours, mine is Django Dennis. We are going to go ahead and grab the client ID. So we're going to get this ID, and this is going to go just after ID equals and between this and symbol. So we're going to remove SB and we'll paste that in there. So now it knows which account we're tied to, and we can actually grab the buttons now. So for the buttons, we're going to take everything from the script tag down to the closing script tag, and we'll throw that in right here. So we have our opening and closing script tag, and then PayPal.buttons, and this ends right here and renders out to that div. So let's go ahead and make sure everything's working. So we have our buttons, we have this PayPal option, and we also have that debit and credit card option. Okay, so everything seems to be working fine. So let's go ahead and just refresh that. And let's test this out by creating a payment to our sandbox account. So we're going to create a payment from our personal account to our business account. So that was called Personal Dennis. So make sure I have that spelt right. And I'm missing a D there, something looked weird there. So personaldennis@gmail.com. And the password we created. So right now, because we have the API key to a sandbox account, it's sending it to that sandbox account right there. So let's go ahead and create that, and let's log in. So the amount right now is set to 1 cent, actually $1.01. So that's USD. So that's going to charge that, and we should see it appear right there. So to complete the purchase, okay, let's see what's going on here. Okay, so it's still at 1 cent. Let's try to change this. I might have not refreshed it. So let's go ahead and save that again and try refreshing the website here. So close that. Let's go ahead and hit refresh. Pay again. Okay, so that did it, and it must have been just because I didn't save that. So now it's $1.01. We want to use the standard PayPal method. So let's go ahead and hit pay now. And once this is processed, I should see it in our PayPal account, and I'll explain what happened here. So let's go ahead and do sandbox.paypal, and I can't remember which account I was logged into. So we got an alert there, everything went well. And now we have our first transaction. So it's gonna appear in a second, but we are minus $1.01. So we had 2,000, and if I log into that business account will now have plus $1.01. So that money just transferred between two fake accounts, and we made a payment. So there we go, Dennis Ivy's test store, negative $1.01. And let's recap what just happened. So before we do that, let me pull up PayPal Dev API. So I want to pull up that flow chart again that we saw earlier and go to that checkout section. And down here, so I'm going to go over these line items here. So we added the PayPal button. The buyer clicks the button. So we click this button right here. This opens up. So it says the button calls the orders API to prep that transaction. So it sets up the amount, gets everything ready. The button launches that PayPal checkout experience that you're seeing there. So this is that PayPal checkout experience. And then when the buyer approves it, the button calls the PayPal orders API to finalize that transaction. So if we look back at the code, here's what's happening. So we click the button and the order is created, and then that pop-up appears in front of us. So this creates that pop-up and specifies the amount that we're about to charge. When the user hits confirm, onApprove is called, and once onApprove is called, this is where we call actions.order.capture, and then it finalizes everything, creates that payment, and then sends the user this alert of transaction completed by, and then whatever that user's name was. So that's that checkout experience. So what I'm going to do now is actually customize the buttons here. So we're going to go to this demo right here, and we can actually look between the client and server-side integration. We'll cover server-side integration in another video, but if we go to style right here, we can actually add this style object right here and customize how everything looks. So let's go ahead and copy that, and we will paste that into PayPal.buttons, and let's make sure to add a comma right there. So this needs to be another item. So if I save this and we refresh it, so if we go back to our checkout setup, we now have blue buttons and they look a little bit different. So let's go back to that code. We set the color to blue and the shape is pill. So I actually want them to be rectangle. So let's just do RECT there. And the label, there's a few different labels. I'll try to link these up in the description. I'll try to find them, but there is code that tells us how to do this. I'll actually drag in a copy of it right now. So let's go ahead and refresh it and see what that looks like. So now they're rectangle right there, and we can continue changing the look of these. So I'll drag in this link right here, which I'll actually throw in. And this is where we're able to customize it. So there's a bunch of different things that we can add into our code that changes the way it looks. So we're able to use black code right here. So the black and white effect, we have silver, white, black. So again, a bunch of different things that we can use to customize this. So the last thing I'm going to do for the styling is actually take out this credit card option. So let's say I don't want this option. I just want them to have debit or credit card and then not use PayPal credit. So for that, based on what I've read in the documentation, we need to customize that. I think we can do it from style, but I found a way to do this from this script tag right here. So I'm actually going to paste in just after currency. We're going to paste in and disable dash, and then we're going to do credit. And we can actually add in different things like disable debit, disable PayPal. And if I throw that in, we should see only 2 buttons now. So there we go. We now have 2 buttons, and we can customize the text that appears with them. And if you continue going through here, we have different options, radio fields, and we can do this horizontal look right here. So again, here's all the code for it, and that just helps us style everything. Okay, so as promised, let's go ahead and go to that advanced section here, and let's review the code we have for this. And whenever we click on a book, let's go ahead and review what we're doing in each section. So let's actually add in the payment options and show you what we've set up here. So let's go ahead and go back to our Django project. So we can close out the simple checkout, and all we need is checkout.html and store.html. So in these 2 options, if you go to the views.py file, I'll actually go ahead and clean up this section. So I'll backspace. All we have is a store. So this store is going to be the landing page to the full website. We are going to query our database. So we actually have a models.py file. And in here, we have a product with a name, a description, an image URL, a price, and that price is a float field. And for the image URL, we are actually going to use Amazon right here. So these are actually 2 books that are on Amazon right now. All I did was, let me refresh this. So all I'm doing is actually just going ahead and inspecting the image URL to the book. So hopefully this doesn't change. And that's where I'm actually pasting that into the admin panel. So I didn't want to spend time configuring the static files and doing all that. So I just got this image URL right here. And if we go to the admin panel, I'll actually open it up in my other browser here. So give me a second, I have a few tabs open. So let's go ahead and open up our admin panel. So I already created a user, and in our admin panel, we have our product or our products. And for the Mountain of Olives, we have the description that I took from Amazon and this link right here. So this is just a link to that Amazon image. So that's how we're rendering out these images from not from the database, but from Amazon, but storing it in our models. So let's go back to that, and we have our product, and we also have an order. So an order simply has the date that it was created, date time field, and it has a relationship to a product. It has a many to one relationship, And anytime an order is created, anytime an order is placed, we're actually going to create this order in the database and track it. So at this point, I've actually created one order. So let's go back into our main admin panel, go to order, and it looks like we place an order for the alchemist. So let's go ahead and place an order for the Mount of Olives. And if we go to our template, so there's our model, we have our view, so it just queries all of the products, and in our checkout, we just query the product that we clicked on, and that product ID is passed in through that URL. We query it right here, and then we pass it into the checkout page. So if we go to our store, I'll try to review the HTML in a second, but we gave it some custom body background. We added in Bootstrap here. So we're using Bootstrap code. We have this container, a row, and we are creating a column for each book. So in store, we're querying all those products. We're passing them into the template through context. So there's products, and we just say for product in products, go ahead and render the name, the product URL, the description, the price, and we create this link to our checkout page. So this is where we're passing in that product ID. So that product ID is thrown in right here through PK, and it's in this URL. So checkout, and then we're passing that in. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands how we're actually getting there. So if we go to the product and we go to buy now, we're seeing checkout, the product ID, and that's how we know what's being pulled up right here. So let's go ahead and finish this up. So the store is actually pretty simple. It's just rendering out a few pictures and items here. And if you go to checkout, same thing, we're adding in Bootstrap, and we're getting that custom background just a little bit gray, just so we can see things a little bit better. And we just create two columns right here. So we have one column for the product image, and then we have another column for the name and the product. So this is where we're going to add in that checkout. So we're throwing in PayPal-button-container. So this is where we're going to store our buttons right here. So if we go back to this section, we just need to add those in right here. Since we already have this container right here in our checkout page, so we have that container, all we need to do is grab this script right here, and we're also going to copy this code in a second. So we'll paste this in, and that will go just under our final div, and I'll actually grab that client ID from the simple checkout that we just created because we are using the same account. So everything from ID equals and then to this and symbol. So we can close that and paste that in right here. So we have our client ID, and the last thing we can take is this script tag right here. So let's take script here, paste it just under this section. So what we're gonna do now is grab this value. We first wanna customize the value that's actually gonna be used in that form. So if you're not familiar with JavaScript, I'll try to go as slow as possible, but I definitely recommend you understand it at this point. So at this point, let's just go ahead and create a variable, and we're going to create the variable called total, and total is going to be equal to that product, the product total here. So we can actually just create a string and use the Django template code right here. So we can just do product because we passed it in just like we did right here, and we can do product.price. So at this point, the user can only buy one product at a time, so we're not going to be totaling anything up. We're just going to take the product price, and we'll take this total and we'll throw that into the value section. So now that we have the new total, let's go ahead and make sure that that's actually working. And we should also have the buttons appear here because we added all of this code right here. So this should render out the buttons, and we should also receive a total. So if I go to PayPal, I think I should be logged in just because I've used this a second ago. I guess not. So we'll do personal Dennis and then just type in our password. Okay, so there we go. So the value is now dynamic. It took the total we have in our page, and If we select the other book, it's also going to give us a total to that. So we're able to customize that by setting up a variable and taking in the product price. So we pass in the product into our template, set that to the variable, and pass it in right here. So what we want to do now is, once this transaction is complete, we want to send this data on approve. We want to be able to send it back to our payment complete URL or our view. So we have this URL pattern, takes us to the payment complete view. And in here, what we want to do is create an order. So we want to track the information to which product was purchased and actually save that information. So for this, we're going to use a little bit more advanced JavaScript. So I'll try to go as slow as possible, but we're going to use the fetch API for this. So just under total, we're going to create a function and we're going to call this complete order. And in here, first what we're going to do is set a URL. So the URL we want to send our data to is going to be to complete, and we call that complete in the name. So we're going to use the Django code for this, and we're going to first set double quotes because we're going to use single quotes inside, and then set the URL to complete. Okay, so we have the URL, and now we want to call the fetch API. So fetch, and we want to pass in the URL that we're going to send data to, and we're going to pass in the method of post. That's going to be a string value, and the headers. And headers are going to be its own object. So headers, for now, all we're going to pass into headers is going to be content dash type, and this needs to be capital C right there. And the content type is going to be application / JSON. Okay, so we have the headers, we have the method, and what we want to do now is also pass the body. So the body is just going to be some data that we're going to pass in. So this has to be JSON.stringify. And we just need to throw in an object that we're going to parse once we pass into this payment complete method here. So in here, what we want to do is get the product ID. So let's go ahead and just say var product ID, and that's going to be a capital I, and we'll just do the same thing that we did right here. So we want to take this piece right here and just say product.id, and we're going to pass it in through that body right here. So product ID gets thrown in right here, and we want to call this complete order method on approve. So at this point, on approve, we call this function. This function is going to send post data to this URL, and then we're going to create that order. But before we can do that, you got to remember that Django requires us to send a CSRF token anytime we're sending post requests. So because of the way we're submitting the data, we need to manually create our own token within JavaScript and send it with these with the headers right here. So we need to send it as data. So what we're going to do here is actually pull up some Django documentation that gives us a workaround to creating our own token and then sending that. So this is directly in the Django documentation. And what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this. I'll link this up in the video description, but we're going to take this and create our token just above our total right there and at the top of our script tag. So we have this function get cookie, and then we create the token by setting the response of that get cookie method. So once we have our token, all we need to do is pass it in to the headers right here. So let's go ahead and pass that in. And for this, we're going to do x-csrf capital T and then token like that. And we're just going to paste in the token we created. So now the token is going to be set or passed in with the headers, so we can actually send post data to this URL, and our complete order function is called right here. So we're sending the product ID right now. Normally what we would do is actually send some more data. So at this point, this data and these actions, we can actually pass that into orders too and get things like transaction IDs and so on, which we will do in my e-commerce video. But for now, we're just going to pass in the product ID, and I am going to print it out. So if we go back to our view, I imported JSON response. So there's a few extra imports I wanted to cover, and we need to parse this data and actually create a dictionary with it. So right now we're just going to set the body to JSON, and then we're gonna console that out. So let's go ahead and do that. And then if everything works, we'll actually create an order just so we can track which items were purchased. So let's go to the site, make sure we can refresh it here. We're on site. Go to our store, actually close out a few tabs here. And let's go ahead and purchase the amount of olives. And I'll make sure that we can see the command line too after we place the order. Okay, so I'm gonna type in my password. Keeps logging me out for some reason. So we got the book total right there. Let's go ahead and hit pay now. And when it's successful, we should go ahead and actually trigger that. So there we go, we have our alert, and there we go. So the body, we got the product ID of 2. So everything's working. So the last thing we need to do at this point is actually create an order. So let's go ahead and create an order by first querying the product. So that's why we passed it in through the body. So we're gonna say product is gonna be equal to product.objects.get. So product.body.get, and we're gonna set the ID to the value of body, and then we need to query that product ID that we passed in. So product capital ID. So that was passed in from what we threw into this data parameter right here. So what we threw into the body, we queried that product ID, and now we need to place the order. So we're gonna say order.objects.create, and for the order, all we need to do is throw in the product here, and the created value is gonna be created automatically. So order, we're gonna say product is gonna be equal to product here. So we query the product, and then we create the order, and that's gonna let us know which date that order was created. So let's make sure everything's running right. And at this point in our admin panel, if we go to our orders, we don't have any orders other than the alchemist. So let's go ahead and place the order for amount of olives. And we'll just go ahead and hit PayPal there. Okay, so we have our total, and hit pay now. Once it's all complete, we should see the order appear here. So there we go, we got our alert, and in our admin panel, there we go, we have an order for the amount of olives, and we can actually see that the transaction time and when all that was taken care of. So that's all I have for this video, and actually implementing that. It's kind of a sneak peek to my e-commerce website. This isn't the actual e-commerce video that I was planning to make. I just wanted to make sure to include Stripe and PayPal before we do all of that. But with this virus going on, guys, I've been sick myself, so my timeline's a little bit off, but I am putting together that e-commerce video. Just give me some time. It'll be out pretty soon. So super excited to get back to this. Don't forget to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.